It's 5:30 p.m. on Monday, June the 20th, 2022. I call this regular meeting of Kingswood Fifth School District to order. We'll have roll call. Joe Morales. Present. Martin Chapel. Present. David Garcia. Present. Elizabeth Ramos.
Here.
James Glusick. Present. Dylan Salinas.
Here.
Brian Kufal is here. Let the record show that there is a quorum of board members present, and that this meeting has been posted in accordance with Government Code Chapter 551, State of Texas Open Meetings Act. We move now to the moment of silence, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance and the Texas Pledge. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The Texas flag, I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one indivisible.
Thank you. This meeting will be live video streamed at /bit.ly/3SROLQR. Move to item number 4, which is adoption of the agenda. Do I have a motion to adopt the agenda? So moved. Motion made by Mr. Glusing. Is there a second? Second. Seconded by Mr. Morales. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposition? Motion carries 7-0. Item number 5, public participation. Ms. Pettis, do we have anyone that wishes to address the board?
No, sir, not.
Thank you. Item number 6, communication from administration. Item 6A is the superintendent's update. First item on the agenda here is the purchase of new school buses and maintenance vehicles. This will be presented by Dr. Pitts and Mr. It can be found on page 3 of our packet.
Thank you, President. Thank you, President Cruz, Superintendent Dr. Pettis, members of the board. We have talked about the aging infrastructure of our district with the buildings, with the roofs. We are currently working on a maintenance roof RFP. We also have an aging vehicle fleet, and we're going to talk about our buses, and then we're going to talk about some of our light fleet vehicles as well too. Let's talk about the buses first. We have several aging buses, and I'm going to let Mr. Vada talk about them in just a minute. But we applied for a bus grant. Well, Mr. Vada applied for a bus grant, and that is going to provide money to pay for 2/3 of 3 buses. We will have to pay for all the buses up front, but then we will be reimbursed for 2/3 of each of those brand new school buses. And I'm going to let Mr. Vada talk a little bit about this bus grant and the condition of our vehicles in these current buses.
Report, Dr. Pettis. Like Dr. Pitts said, we have a very aging fleet. Majority of our fleet is 10 to 20 years old. So we found this grant, the TURP grant is what it's called, a couple of years ago. We applied for it during COVID, but they ended up redirecting those funds because of COVID. So of course, when it came back around, wanted to be the first ones to get those monies. So we did all the legwork that they asked for, took tons of pictures, did a lot of research, found numbers that are long gone, worn off these buses after all the years. And we checked back daily when we were prepared. After about 2 months of checking back literally every single morning, it opened. We were, I want to say, top first 10 schools or so to submit for this grant. We submitted 4 buses. We only got 3 buses due to a lapse in registration. Excuse me, but we'll take the 3 because we need them. Like Dr. Pitts said, it covers 2/3 of the bus, about $75,000 each is what they gave us for them. We're still not even close to done with the grant. Once we purchase the buses, we have to quote unquote destroy the old ones, and that's going to be a process. We have 2 options. We can do it in-house ourselves. They're asking for a 4-inch hole blown through the engine block. I don't know how we would do that. And we have to cut the bus to half. We could probably do that part, but getting the buses off of our lot is going to probably cost more than doing all that work. So we found Rose Truck Sales in Corpus Christi that does this for area districts. They're not going to charge us, but they do want to keep the buses. I figured that's an okay deal, and we're going to get $74,000 for them anyway. So we're going to go with the buses that we want to move forward with are Thomas buses, and 6 of our fleet buses right now are Thomas buses. We're moving to a smaller diesel engine. It's a 4-cylinder, less maintenance, better fuel economy, and with the way gas prices are, I think that's a good thing. Thomas Bus of South Texas is telling us that we can get these buses 2 to 4 weeks after we generate appeal, which is great because that means we'll be able to start our school year with 3 new buses, and that's going to look really good for the district, I think. That's really the whole gist of it all. If you guys have any questions, I'll try my best.
Yes, I got a question. You said they're going to give us $74,000 for every new bus. Is that correct, Mr.?
That's the average. I want to say the correct math is like $74,800. So,
Okay. And then you said Rose Truck Sales is going to come and pick them up.
we're going to drive them that way.
Are they going to give us anything for those? Do you know, or?
They're not going to give us any money for them, but they're going to do all the work for free. They're going to give us all of the pictures and the other documentation that we need to send to TCEQ.
I think I'd like to maybe, if we can, I know because I deal with transportation every single day, so Gov Deals will put those buses into their database nationwide. And I know from experience, our buses aren't nothing compared to the school buses, but we were able for 5 or 6 buses that we put up for Gov Deals, we picked up, I think it was an additional like $64,000 from the buses.
That would be selling it to somebody else.
Somebody else, you got other people, they do everything for us, really. And it's just an option, we don't have to do that. I'm just saying is that if we could get some money back from the buses that we are gonna be disposing, I think that's something we can look into. So it's Gov Deals, and I'd be glad to give you the contact person. I mean, they just deal with strictly, I guess you would say, equipment that has to deal with governments and things like that, so.
You said it had to be destroyed.
Yes,
What's
so
the purpose?
that's what I was getting at. That's one of the stipulations of the grant. We have to get those buses off of the road. That's why they use the word destroy. We need to blow a hole in the engine block to where it's not repairable.
Okay.
And we literally have to cut the bus in half.
Wow.
And now I did toss around the idea of if we take those buses to salvage, the price of metal right now is not horrible. We would probably get a few $1,000s for them. But the cost that it's gonna take to get those buses to the salvage yard is gonna be more than what we would get.
Well, if the grant stipulates that it's gotta be destroyed, then yeah, we gotta destroy it.
We don't wanna be caught in that position where we don't do what we need to do and we end up footing the bill for all three.
Let me just add that the amount of work that Mr. Rivera put into applying for this grant was tremendous. And again, as you can see, it basically nets the district about $241,000 for these new buses. And he did his legwork. I asked him to get several quotes for the new buses as well too. So we made sure that we were getting the best value for the district. And of course, as he said, we're gonna have these buses in time for the next school year. So let's move on to the maintenance fleet. So this,
Dr. Pitts, I just have one question.
yes,
How many other buses do you think are in I know you had to choose 3. Are there other buses that need to be replaced as well?
Absolutely. We have one bus that's like a 1992, I believe, and athletics uses that bus. That's bus 10. Coach Dalla knows that bus well. We would benefit from trying to do this again with at least another 5. And these are just our route buses. Our special needs buses are a whole different animal that we need to figure out a way to move forward with in the future. But there are other grants that are coming available, and we're going to look into those and see if that's something that KISD wants to do moving forward. There's a lot of monies out there right now for electric buses and propane buses and a lot of other alternative fuel buses. We just need to figure out what direction we want to go.
What bus numbers are gonna be taken out for this?
The grant is gonna take buses 44, 45, and 46. They're all 2002s, or maybe 3s.
And the handicap bus is not included in that?
We did not send any handicap buses. We refurbed 2 of them, and their motors did not qualify the buses.
I know we need a lot, this 47 is running around here with black smoke too.
Yep, we put a Band-Aid on it to try and make it through the year. Kind of a good thing that we ended a little bit early because I don't think we would have made it another week. And that's another conversation that we're going to have Dr. Pitts and I. But we're trying, we're taking what we can get as we get it, so.
Thank you.
These buses that we are taking off and we're trading in, are we able to use the parts off of them to refurbish some of the buses that we have?
Yes, so bus numbers 43, 4, 5, and 6 are all the same model. We were really hoping 43 was gonna go. So what we're working on currently is taking the better parts from the other 3 to kind of make bus 43 roadworthy for the next few years.
Dr. Pitts, are these capitalized items?
yes, they are. Anything that is over $5,000 for an individual item will be capitalized.
Is it 3 or 5, or do you know how many years it is?
Oh, depreciated?
Well, it's, the capitalized items are kind of expensed off over that period of time. So the depreciation on them would be part of that. What is that, 5? Or
I believe the buses are at 10, but I was looking at the schedule and sometimes it depends on the type of bus as well too. So that's something I'll have to look with our auditor and see how long these vehicles are going to be depreciated for.
And then in our budget discussions, we'll be looking at the potential of, I mean, this kind of takes care of this year, but in the past, we've talked about an ongoing fleet maintenance program trying to replace X number of buses per year.
Yes, we are looking at both in the transportation budget for our vehicles and in the maintenance budget for our HVAC and roofing and our parking lots as well, including that in the budgets this year.
Thank you.
The other part is our light fleet. Our light fleet again is we have I'm gonna have Matt talk about the fleet a little bit, but we have a lot of pickups in maintenance. We have some vans in maintenance, and then of course we have some vehicles that are used to transport students, some expeditions and so on too. So this one we're kind of at the start of the process, but we wanted to let you know that we have a very aging vehicle fleet. Some of these vehicles, again, are over 20 years old, and some of them don't have air conditioning. Some of them are getting to the point where they're not drivable, and we do need to upgrade our fleet. This one, there was no grant that we applied for. We are currently investigating options of looking at used vehicles, looking at vehicles that we can buy from buy board at a government rate. Probably the last option is to buy vehicles just from a regular dealer because we don't get any special government rate when we buy from the dealer. The main issue that we're going to have here is availability. Right now, vehicles are at a premium. Very tough to get vehicles, and of course they are charging you a lot for them too. So we don't really want to pay full price for them either. So I'm going to let Mr. Vada talk a little bit about our fleet and then a little bit about these 5 vehicles that we have identified that are in the most need, and then we will I'll come back and we'll talk a little bit about options that we have.
So as Dr. Pitt said, we have our maintenance fleet is in poor condition, some of those vehicles. We've identified 5 of the vehicles in the worst condition. Some of them may not have many miles, but they're all in town. And they use these vehicles to haul this heavy equipment. They have their skid steers, their mowers, their tractors that they have to haul to all these different schools. And I guess just through the years, they just got worn out. We are in the process of talking with Mr. Garza over at Maintenance to develop a more detailed, I guess, pre-trip plan and maintenance plan for these vehicles. I know for the past few years, we haven't really had any mechanics. We have a couple of mechanics now that are outstanding, they do great. So I firmly believe that we can keep better care and keep these maintenance vehicles better PM than they have been in the past. I really think that's the reason that they're in the condition that they're in. As far as them, their life left, I guess, there's a couple of them that are on their last leg. There's not very much more money that I think the district would be willing to put into these vehicles. They're all currently running. All 5 on this list all have power issues. They're just worn out. They're 2002s, 2003s. One of them's been stuck at the Ford dealership for a few months with an electrical issue. It's not worth fixing. It's gonna cost us more to diagnose the truck than it is to buy a new truck probably. So we have some plans in place to moving forward to keep our vehicles in better condition. Will they make it the next school year? We're hoping so, especially because availability right now for vehicles is very scarce. I've been in contact with Fleet Ford and Fleet Chevy. Fleet Chevy, we have a better chance. We can maybe get some vehicles if we act soon, probably about by January or March. Ford's saying maybe next September. So this is something that we've looked at in the past, but I feel like we're in a position where we need to not just look, we need to act. Maybe not with all 5, but with a couple, might not be right now, like Dr. Pitt said, we're really early on in doing our research, and there's a whole lot of legwork that's to be done.
Mainly you're wanting to inform the board.
Yeah, we're just bringing it to the board's attention. Again, it's very, very early stages of this. I really wanted just availability, because I know in the public sector, it's really hard to get a vehicle right now.
What I would be interested in is how much are these vehicles gonna cost? And what does it cost to hire, have workforce in camp? You said you have it now, we didn't have that, I want to know how much it's cost us to not have a certain,
To like send them out.
yeah, I want to know how much money we lost because we didn't have a camp.
That's under the, again, we're super early stages of it. So any kind of information you guys want, just feel free to reach out and we'll try to get it for you guys.
Because honestly, that's going to give us the ammunition to fight and say, we need mechanics. If one of them decides that they want to move to Denver, that's fine, we need to replace them. If you don't know, what are we saving by
You can get that information.
Excluding school buses, what, and just to guess, what do you think the size of the total fleet is of other vehicles?
Not including school buses,
Not including school buses.
about 35.
So it's about 7%. About 20% maybe.
And this, we've only talked about maintenance vehicles, as Dr. Chris stated, our district vehicles are already, they're coming of age. We've been finding body work that needs to be done on them, as far as like holes on their roofs and stuff like that, that we need to get fixed sooner than later. Especially with the fall coming up, all those vehicles are gonna be gone, especially on Fridays. So we have a long road ahead, but the district vehicles, they're in decent enough condition to last another few years. But like you were saying, Mr. Kruval, we need to come up with a plan moving forward.
The optimal goal would be to find vehicles either that are gently used, being retired from somebody else's fleet, or that are on buy board. So not only do we get a discounted rate, but the problem is if we have somebody that's not on buy board, then really, if a vehicle comes available, we have to wait for the next board meeting to get that approved so that we can purchase it, and that vehicle may be gone in the time before the next board meeting. So that's an issue there. Not only would we want to not pay more by getting someone that's not on buy board, but also the availability, we could miss those opportunities. Any other questions on district vehicles?
I want to thank Mr. Bennett, because he really worked hard on those grants. I know he did. Thank you.
All right, we move now to item number 2, which is the master schedule update. This information has been provided to us tonight by Dr. Bettis.
Yes, I just wanted to give you all a copy of where we are with the Gillette and H&T master schedules. We put in the classes that, we want to make sure that we did, well, according to the simple tallies of what the students requested, but also making sure that every one of the pathways, there are no just local credits as far as just to take a class. If every one of them leads up into a pathway towards either a CTE certification, making sure we have the college prep and college prep math, college prep English. At the high school though, what will change is in the summer, depending on how many students recover credits or how many students pass their STAR test, those are really the main things that change that would affect the master schedule in August, is we have to see, okay, where do we need to move some of these kids? Also, if some of the kids did not pass their algebra, they're still needing, or they're not ready for algebra 1, we have what's called strat math. It's like strategic math that we have for our 9th grade. And again, just depending on how many students need it after summer school, then that's where you would say, okay, instead of this algebra 1 class, we're going to put that into a strat math and put kids in there that need that extra year to develop. But I just kind of want to give you an idea of where we're at. This is a lot farther ahead than it has been in the past. And we wanted to make sure that we worked with Cardonics. It was that company that we were working with when we started back in January. We had everybody involved. The principals, their assistant principals, their counselors, our AD, our fine arts director, the CTE, everybody was, even the, all the counselors, but also the registrars, here in the boardroom, working on the master schedules, so they'd understand the why of why are things like rolling out the way they are, and be able to answer to it. We also included PLC time. Definitely have some PLC time for all the STAR subjects. We also should have the BRAINA time that includes AI time, and that's for the accelerated instruction time. That's for the Hospital 45 that we all learned about at, well, some of you attended that session at the SLI conference we just came from. So we have that embedded into the master schedule as well.
The question when it comes to 45. Their only requirement, let's say they don't do summer school for whatever reason, they had to go see dad in Ohio the whole summer. They come back and they need those 30 hours and start at the beginning of the year. Once they're finished with the 30 hours, well, then that shouldn't take an entire year, more like maybe a semester to get that, and then what happens to their schedule afterwards?
It depends on how well they're doing there. If they've mastered it and they take the STAR in December and they pass it, then for the next semester, they'll be doing TSI. So like the kids that don't need Hospital 45, we have them in TSI prep class.
So they're gonna do their 30 hours, then take their STAR only in December.
Well, it depends on if they're supposed to retest in December. But if not, then they're just gonna continue because most likely they really need it. And it depends on if they failed more than one subject.
What if they opt out of TSI? What if they don't want to do any of that?
Then it's not gonna be a choice because we really need to get these kids TSI ready. Whether if they're not TSI ready, then they're gonna be taking college prep at college now. This will prevent students from having to take any remedial classes when they get to college, if they get to college, if they want to go to college. But it will just make them much more prepared as a graduate.
What about seniors? Does that count for seniors as well?
Yes, the seniors who have all passed the EOC tests, their AI is the enrichment of college readiness TSI type prep. They don't want to go to college.
What if that doesn't apply to them?
Doesn't matter, we want to make sure that they're getting educated, they're scholarly, and it's not gonna be a waste of time. It's gonna be something that's gonna prepare them for test taking. If let's say they want to take a certification test, these are good strategies to use in any type of.
Is that required in the minimal high school diploma? The basic high school diploma is not required. Okay, but we're gonna give it to them anyway.
Yes, because we want more for our kids.
Also, Dr. Pettis, we have kids that graduate and then 2 years later want to get into college. So
Yes.
once we have the TSI out of the way, then it's going right into it. And especially the two courses, the English and the math that you talked about. They pass that. I mean, they're not taking remedial classes anymore.
Right.
They're in the real class.
That's correct. We've had several students that have quit. They finished high school and then they do decide they want to come back and try to take a TSI, try to get some TSI prep because, they've grown up a little bit and they've developed a little bit. So y'all have any questions? And this is going to be ongoing. So if there may be some changes again because of summer school, so summer recovery. But if y'all have any questions about this, it's like kind of a little bit fluid, depending on, let's say we have an influx of students, another 100 kids, and the classes have gotten too full, we have to open up, or we have to have a big shortage of students. That may affect it, but I just wanted to let you know where we are at this point in the game.
They don't have to pass an EOC to graduate. They'll move to the next grade level.
To move to the next grade level, to graduate, yes.
Okay.
All right, if there's no further questions, we'll move now to item number 3, which is the STAR EOC preliminary data overview. This will be presented by Ms. Andrea Ramirez and found on page 10 of our packet.
And she gave us a fresh.
Yes, please refer to the fresh copy. For whatever reason, when it was copied from board book, it turned your color coding system to black. And I want you to see green. All right, good evening, board members, Dr. Bettis. Before I present the preliminary STAR data, I just wanted to review a few items with you. Number one, what you're going to see in the data that moving fifth grade, and I think Dr. Bettis mentioned this in an email, moving fifth grade to the elementary school really our students. I think the fifth, sixth grade intermediate caused some distractions, but moving them back to fifth grade allowed for some focus, which you'll see in the data. Also, in speaking to significant grade levels and some growth that was shown, I took the time to speak with a handful of teachers and administrators based on the significant growth of data that you're going to see in a minute. And when I talked to them, I asked them to tell me why. What was different this year? What were some trends that they saw? I was very happy to hear consistently relationships was always mentioned first. And I think that's key because I think when you have relationships, not only with your colleagues and you're in support of each other and collaborating, when you have them with your students, then your students want to work with you as well. We've all heard that saying that says, you know, they don't care what you know until they know that you care. And I think that was very evident in the teachers. So not just the relationships with their students, but also relationships within their grade level and the collaboration. And so the students saw that as well. The second thing that was shared was teacher expectations. And I know this is going to be hard to hear, but I really want to share when some people say my students can't do that, what happens is the teacher determines the ceiling the students reach. So when a teacher has high expectations and teaches the TEKS on grade level and really helps to close that gap and works with students in small group, the students are going to meet that expectation. So you set high expectations, students meet it. You say my students can't do that, so you set the expectation here, the students are going to meet that. So that was the second consistent item that came out in my conversations with teachers and administrators. The other thing was we followed the pacing guides, we used the curriculum with fidelity, we had great teacher collaboration, and we took the time to plan together and support each other in our content. So those were key factors that came out in some of the scores that you're going to see. In looking at the 3rd through 5th grade data, you'll notice significant growth in 3rd grade by double digits in most, in math, reading, in math and reading. In 4th grade, you'll see the growth as well. You're going to see a trend of maybe higher growth in reading, and I think that's because through our grant work and our tip work, we really focused on reading this year. And in 5th grade, you'll notice the growth in approaches by 21 and 27% respectively in math and reading, as well as an increase in meets. We do have some continued work to do in science, in meets and masters, and I'm going to address the meets towards the end of my presentation. But in approaches, we grew by 17%. So in 3rd grade reading, one campus significantly contributed to that overall growth, and I'm going to share that with you in a minute. And in 4th grade, we did have 2 of our elementary campuses that consistently show growth in that area as well. So if you turn the page, and I know you can't read this, so I'm hoping that you can focus in on your copy, but I wanted to fit all elementary campuses on one page so that you could look at the comparisons across the board. We have each of our elementary campuses highlighted, and you'll notice at Harvey Elementary, we have a lot of increases in green. We do have a decrease in one area in 3rd grade mathematics. We don't have comparison data in fifth grade because fifth grade was not part of elementary last year. At Harrell Elementary, we really have to highlight this campus. This campus was our tip campus. It was our F campus. And you'll notice in 21 how low the scores were. They were low in 2019, which caused them to have that continued F. But you'll notice in mathematics third grade, a 50% increase in approaches, 46% increase in meets, and a 25% increase in masters. That's huge. In reading, again, we see a 33% increase in approaches, 24 in meets, and 17 in masters. In fourth grade, math, 22% approaches, 12%. Now, they did have a 2% decrease in meets, but with the growth, it compensates for that. Yes, thank you. Thank you. And in reading, 15% growth, 26% in meets, and 10% in masters. Now, I did speak to teachers on this campus because when you look at the data in comparison to the other campuses, you'll notice that they scored equal to or above, and this was our, again, F campus. I also looked at their 2019 data before COVID, and they surpassed, of course, that data as well. So Harrell was doing a really good job to close the significant gaps that were created, not only from being an F campus in 2019, but also COVID. So in speaking to a couple of teachers there, and I really focused in on third grade because they had the most significant growth, which wasn't expected. And the reason it's not expected is because you have to remember our second grade students, they didn't finish their first grade year. And in second grade, we had a lot of remote learning. So I wanted to talk to teachers. Now, some of the trends, they mentioned some of the trends that I mentioned at the beginning. Other things they noted was in math. She really focused on vocabulary. The math vocabulary and really using that vocabulary and having students use the math vocabulary. She didn't focus on teaching computation. Most teachers would want to come in and focus on teaching computation. What they did was they focused on teaching problem-solving strategies. Because as you know, the math test is a reading test. And if you can't read it, you're going to have a difficult time problem solving. So what she did was she taught them how to, and this is a great strategy that many teachers do, but she taught them how to make the math grid so they didn't have to worry about memorization. So she ingrained them. She said she also followed the Sharon Wells math with fidelity, keeping in mind that Sharon Wells trained them every 6 weeks for the period that was coming up. And so she followed that curriculum to a T, repetition, engaging students. So those are some of the things that she said. The reading teacher said that she really held the students accountable. She set the expectations. She used AR consistently. She set the expectation that they read 4 books a week, and they met her expectation because she didn't accept any lower, and she monitored that weekly. She did fluency folders weekly. She had small group instruction daily. She followed the curriculum, and she focused on phonics and phonemic awareness based on the student needs in small groups and reading. So I think those are all key elements that we are asking of teachers to do, and they are addressing. Of course, I had to go to the principal to say, talk to me, and we're talking about a first-year principal. So talk to me about what was different. Well, one of the things we do know was that the teacher-student ratio was lower in first grade, but a student-teacher ratio can be lower and the work still not occur. So she did say that they did work together. They collaborated a lot. The ITC
role was instructional in nature, as well as the leadership team. They met regularly in PLCs. She was consistently in the classroom doing walkthroughs and observations, and addressing the curriculum in that manner. So again, those are all key elements of what we are asking of our leaders as well, and we will continue to do that work next year.
I want to reiterate everything you said because I've been giving away the Amazon gift cards, to the teachers, for that incentive for how well they did. And each one has come in separately throughout today, since I was here today, and saying the same things. And I'm asking each one of them, so tell me, how did this happen? Tell me, reflect on it. Same things. The first thing they say is we work like a team. We work like a team. That came up so many times. We were able to rely on each other. We were consistent. One of them said, I didn't like that we were having to do the curriculum the way that it was being rolled out at first, but then it finally clicked that it was being rolled out for a reason. And so I stuck with it, and it shows in their data. The leadership, again, at Harrell, because it's true, Harrell was an F campus. They had Claiborne students coming in this year, and they knocked it out of the park. And we just have to give kudos to Tani Trevino for an immense job we did in leadership. Hard it is. We know how hard it is. And everybody did well, but you have to kind of look for those exemplars that we're going to be able to showcase and learn from. Kind of like we all went to an SLI conference this week. We learned from other districts. This is what we need to do here too. Let's learn from the ones that are already knocking it out of the park and not reinvent the wheel. And so we have to acknowledge that. So I cannot say enough about that. The consistency about what was expected at the elementaries is pretty evident in the data. And I have to commend the CNI and Ms. Angie Ramirez, the CNI department, for making sure that we stayed the course and we kept on. So thank you for the work that you did, Dr. Farah. Of course, our special ed working with that as well. Thank you all so much for everything. Before we go on to the next grade levels, but I just want to make sure and highlight them too.
I just have a question before we go on. They're great things and everything. I was just wondering, how do we compare to the state and to the region?
We don't know yet. Remember that this is preliminary data. And so we'll have to wait until their data comes out. And they won't be putting that out until
August 15th?
Yes, because they need to look at various other, for example, when we put some of this data together, we didn't have our EL proficiency scores in, we don't have our snapshot information. But one of the things that we will be asking administrators to do is, it's key, and we've been saying this all year long, that students show progress. When they regress, it hurts us. So,
and we already know, like what I've been telling everybody is, we still have a lot of work to do.
Yes.
We do, because we were so low. But any growth, teachers need to know, they kind of need to feel validated that, okay, we're on the right track, we gotta keep trucking, and then we're gonna show more growth. But I know that when the state, and for sure with the state, but the region is what I like to really compare ourselves to. When we're there, we may not beat the region, right? And that's okay this year. This year, what we struggled with, what we focused on was growth. And if we showed any regression, then we would know, oh, we're on the wrong path. But it looks like we're
And
headed.
that's what is basically what the state is looking for, right?
Mhm.
Just growth this year.
right, because of COVID.
Mr. Ramirez, if you could go back one slide. I think it is 3 to 5, historically, what has been hard for this board and this district, and we'll focus on the blue numbers. When we had approaches far less than 50%, that was difficult to explain to the community. And consistently across the board, every one of the approaches is now above the 50% mark. And that's huge for this district, absolutely huge. And again, everybody else may be 75 to 80, but for us to have passed that 50% mark at least, we're heading in the right direction.
Yes, sir. Thank you for noticing that, because I'm going to say something at the end regarding meat. So I appreciate you bringing that up.
I have a question with Harold on there for mathematics, in 2021, it had 0 for star meets and 0 for star masters. Is that a misprint?
That is not a misprint. They did not have any students at the masters or meets level.
It just didn't show the test or?
They just didn't have any score at the meets or masters. Bettis did significantly well in third grade reading. You'll see the percentages of increases. In approaches, there was only 4%, but in meets and masters, there were 17 and 13. And we've got some work to do with fourth grade. And fifth grade did extremely well in reading this year, very well. Looking at our middle school, Gillette Middle School, this data is backwards 8th, 7th, and 6th grade. And I guess the reason I did that is because I just really wanted to highlight 8th grade. This growth was huge in 8th grade. Mathematics, 40% increase in approaches, 30% in meets, 9% in masters. In reading, 28% in approaches, 22% in meets, 16% in masters. Reading and math is where they had the biggest increase. Again, overall district, we focused on reading, but we also had some math supports in 8th grade. Now, I did bring in an individual to a teacher to talk to her about, because I know what we have in place, and we're not, as Dr. Bettis said, we're not there yet. We need to continue to do the work. But I did want to hear from the teacher's perspective about what they thought contributed. And many of the things that I said at the beginning were the same. The relationships. If students could come to any one of the 8th grade teachers, they were very supportive of each other. When they didn't get something, they would talk to each other and say, oh, this is so hard. What did you do? How am I, how can you help me? And so the collaboration was there. They consistently pre-planned together. They used the study sync and they were very structured. That's our reading program. And she said before, some of us were using it, some of us weren't using it, or we were using other things. But we require study sync, and so they followed it with fidelity. They noticed that everything was there, and so they have used it consistently. They've even integrated a handful of social studies sessions within their block. We have something that we call the claim, evidence, and reasoning, and it's a reading strategy. Really, you can use it in any content area, but we were using it across reading. And the teacher said, wow, that was great. From the beginning of the year to the end of the year, where the students started and where they were in their critical thinking was amazing. And we did that from 3rd grade on. Again, planning, addressing data, spirals, collaboration. They said they were she said they were very routine. All of the teachers had the same structure, the same expectations. Students came in, they knew what to do right away. The whole period was used. And so she said expectations was key in that as well. Same thing for math. They were very excited about curriculum writing this year because we have the framework. All they're going to do this year is they're going to look at, okay, what do you think we should have taught sooner because it took more time or it needs more time. But really they're going to build upon the curriculum writing framework, adding consistent activities, resources, and strategies to support. We're also adding an assessment week where they build, because there's a STAR redesign coming up. And so that's going to be huge for teachers to understand what that looks like and build assessments, because writing is going to be a part of every content. It's not going to be a separate entity now. So those were some of the 8th grade highlights. We had growth in 7th grade as well. We need to continue to do more work and support there. And then 6th grade did really well across the board in approaches, needs, and masters as well.
Now, we could tell during the year, based on their PLCs, whether there was collaboration or not. And we knew 7th grade was going to be a struggle. just based on adult behavior. And so we're having some very transparent conversations about that and making sure that we're providing supports, even more support this year to help ensure that they are working like a team, that everybody's working like a team, and we're gonna give them whatever it is they need to help accomplish, to help even grow more. I really appreciated when Ms. Ramita spoke to one of the social studies teachers, because we have to address that part. And the way the teacher held, and I'll just say himself or herself, accountable, was very commendable, very professional. The teacher said, I own this. I failed my kids, and this is what I'm gonna do. And I'm gonna tell you how I failed them, and he or she owned up to it. And that was, I got goosebumps, because no excuses. It's like, this is what I already have planned, this is what I wanna do, and this is what it's gonna take to have that growth mindset and get us where we need to go. So I really appreciated that.
Thank you for bringing that up, Dr. Bettis, because although I did highlight the high achieving and I wanted to know what they did, I also talked to, and that was a very refreshing conversation with that teacher, because right away, you know, they just said, let me just start by saying, I'm disappointed in myself. My kids deserve better and they will get better next year. And so I said, talk to me about what you're doing. The teacher has already attended a professional development this year, is asking for more professional development. And I also took the time to talk to the teacher about the support that we could provide this teacher next year as well. And the teacher was very open to it and welcoming. And so that's great news. I also asked him to work collectively with the reading teachers, because if the social studies teachers are working collective on social studies is a reading test. You've got to build those connections. It's not about teaching timelines and precedents. It's about teaching how all of these elements connected to each other. It's a very high critical thinking test. And so if our social studies connect with our reading teachers next year, I think they will definitely see success.
And then you'll see that the number of students tested, I don't know if that kind of caught your eye, a lot more students were tested than last year. So it was, there were even more students that had to, you know, so we were already, even before we're gonna talk to these teachers, it was thinking ahead, like, well, maybe there was more, you know, or maybe there was something wrong with the test or all sorts of things. And that's why it was so refreshing to hear the teachers not use any excuses and just say, no, this is on me and this is because of whatever, and this is what I'm gonna do. So anyway, you know, I share that.
Well, I think it goes back to what Ms. Ramirez was talking about earlier, is that sometimes our teachers were already, the perception was our kids can't do this. And that needs to change. Absolutely. That has to change, because the teacher is the one that's in the classroom with these children. So, and it reflects that as we're increasing, that the structure of our teachers maybe needs to be geared to where these kids are going to achieve. And this one individual, wherever he or she was, you know, they saw that. I really believe that they saw that, and that they were accountable. Said, hey, you know what, I'm going to make myself better. So that education, that communication has to be distributed among all campuses, I'm thinking. So good job. I mean,
That was a great example. Also, I wanted to share, one of the teachers that came in today for their card, it was an Algebra 1 teacher. And she shared a story, and we're gonna highlight it in convocation, but we just had goosebumps. Because a student in 8th grade was in the Algebra 1 class by accident. This student had gotten an extremely low start grade the previous year.
Can I share this one?
A 9%.
Okay. Well, because I think low is very relative, and so it's important to understand how
extremely low. Okay, so this student was in there in the class. She's expecting the student to do just as well as everybody else in the Algebra 1 class. Saw the struggle, then talked to the parent and said, do you want to move the student back to regular 8th grade? The parents said, no, absolutely not. For the first time, he's being expected to reach this, and he's actually motivated, a little motivated, okay? So he's a little motivated, but struggling. Even, you know, some other kids may have been teasing him and things like that. By the end, the kids, when the teacher was working with the student on the board, she turned around because she thought the kids were mocking him because they had a paper up or giving him answers. And come to find out, the kids were saying, go, and then they said his name, you can do it, you can do it. I mean, everybody was rallying around him. Star scores, the kid got masters.
Oh, my goodness.
Masters. That says something. The teacher didn't give up on him, the parents didn't give up on him, he didn't give up on himself, and not his classmates either. That's what we're talking about with relationships and the power of what can happen. So these stories are just like, we're just freaking out, you know, we're just so excited. So I have to share these types of things.
Okay, looking at our high school data, in English 1, we did not see much growth. We saw a little bit of growth and some decline in English 2. Now, we were using a new curriculum this year.
English 1, okay, in the needs and masters, is that what you meant?
In English 1 and English 2, I'm kind of looking at them collectively. We do have a new curriculum for our English. Before, they were using a variety of things, not really meeting collectively. So in January, I believe it was January when I met with them, we brought in the presenter. We provided, I want to say, about 4 to 5 more sessions this semester. They sort of had this aha moment in January, like, oh, you know, but sometimes when you say, okay, guys, how can we help you or how can we support you? Here's what we're seeing in the data. They don't quite know, but once you present it to them in a way that they're like, oh, wait, we should have been what? You know, so I think we're going to see some gains next year with more professional development, more consistency, collaboration within the English department. English is an area where Kingsville has struggled. We just continue to see this. Now, Algebra 1, we saw some really good gains. And in Algebra 1, we were working with our coaching consultant throughout the year, embedding spirals, pacing guides. So we saw some growth there in approaches, means, and masters. In biology, we do have some work to do. This year, they were piloting STEM scopes. Now, everybody was using it. We just wanted them to get comfortable with it. They were using their previous curriculum. Next year, we will be using STEM scopes collectively across the science curriculum, providing them PD and follow-up. And then in U.S. history, the growth does not look huge. However, U.S. history has always been one of Kingsville's highest performing areas. So you're going to see smaller growth there because they're doing so well. So they went from a 77 to an 82, which is excellent in approaches, 47 to a 54 in means, and then masters at a 23. So they're right there at the A margin of U.S. history. Usually what I tell teachers and administrators is there's a 90-60-30 rule. And if you can do 90-60-30, you pretty much gave yourself an A in the TA accountability rating. And so you can see U.S. history is right on the cusp of that. So what does this mean for next year? Next year, we really need to just follow up and follow through with teachers. Are you following the pacing guides? Are you setting high expectations? Are you working collaboratively as a team, supporting each other? Really being in the classrooms and because sometimes you don't know what you don't know and sometimes it takes pointing it out. We need to move away from approaches, okay? We need, next year, our goals have to be set at needs. If we set goals at needs, we will meet approaches. Approaches is not on grade level. meets is on grade level. So it's great to say that 90% of my children met approaches, but if only 20% of them met grade level expectation, that's what we really have to start looking at. If we focus on meets, we will get the approaches. We need to make sure our students are learning on grade level. So we need to start looking collectively as a district at meets. We're going to continue our curriculum work, our curriculum writing, assessment writing with teachers. We're going to share the stories about setting high expectations, and when you set high expectations, students will meet that. We all know the expectations we set, students meet, high or low. While we continue to build capacity, and what does relationships look like? How do we build those relationships with our students? Do we greet our students when they come in? Or do we just say, sit down and listen to me, or here's a packet, or what does our instruction look like? So we need to continue to build those relationships. They're important. We need to focus on instructional planning and delivery. It's one thing to say, here's, we have these pacing guides and we're building on curriculum writing. Lesson plans look very different than pacing guides. Lesson plans tells us that a teacher has looked at that pacing guide, looked at their resources, planned for effective instructional delivery, including student engagement and activities. And then we need to make sure that our instruction is aligned to the TEKS on grade level needs, not where we think the children should be, but where the children, not where we think the children are, but where the children should be. Questions?
I'd like to say, first of all, congratulations for all the growth. Also, we talked about middle schools, and some of us have been in middle schools, and whatever happens between class periods was not happening in the classrooms. So as you can see by the growth, so I appreciate that kind of work. I know that there've been changes, but at the same time, the teachers are consistent with their teaching, and PLCs, obviously, we need some work, like you said, here and there, but the bottom line is that there was teaching going on, and the data said it showed it.
And I would like to end by really not just thanking the teamwork within here and everybody that's involved with curriculum and instruction, because it does take teamwork from special education to CNI to Dr. Sandoval's role and so on. Thank the teachers for doing the work. It's not easy coming back from COVID, and I know they were exhausted. And thanks to the principals for their leadership, because without their leadership, we wouldn't be moving this train forward in the same direction. So like Dr. Betta says, I know it might sound tiring, but it's so true. Teamwork works. And when we collaborate and build upon each other's strengths, we're going to see success. So
it was an exhausting year. I know our principals worked super hard. I know with the assistant principals and everybody on their team. So thank you so much for everything that you did. There was growth. I mean, everybody's pulling forward. So it was
Mr. Mayor, one other thing before we move on, last year, at some point last year, I believe the discussion was around grading, when we talked about pushing and setting higher expectations. And one of the kind of newer things that was implemented was the individual student tracking.
mm-hmm.
Has that, how big of a role has that played?
I think it's played a huge role, and I think for the campuses that lived by that student tracker and really teachers met with students consistently and talked to students about their growth and their goal setting, I think they saw it. I think we need to continue to do that, and we need to implement that much more consistently, whether it's looking at not just because we have common assessments, but those are every 9 weeks. So we could be measuring progress in our fluency probes, in our accelerated reading levels. Have they grown? Because students should grow at least 9 months within a year in the accelerated reader. So are they growing? Are they staying the same? Why or why not? In elementary, small groups are gonna be key, even in middle school, to be honest with you, because they have a 90-minute period block in their content area. So working in small group with students, knowing their data, knowing what they need in those small group sessions, and building upon that. It's like that, those 2 third grade teachers told me we did that consistently. We met with our groups for 20 minutes every single day based on what they needed to support their reading and math. So I think that
They're taking ownership is huge. The kids have to take ownership. Now, the summer learning activities, some of the teachers that I talked with today, because I've been preaching that on the robocalls, they're starting to send me pictures now of kids showing they completed their Achieve 3000 at this point, or they're, and we've got to remind parents, any parents that are out there, please remind your children, get on those Smarty Apps or the Education Galaxy or the Achieve 3000, whatever it is that we've assigned for your child for summer learning. So that way they don't digress. They're gonna be right there. They're gonna be right there. And not lose any learning over the summer. And one of the teachers, a third grade teacher from Merrill, said, I put my kids on Education Galaxy, with fidelity, continuously throughout the year. So if they can keep that up through the summer, they're gonna continue to grow.
And then just one more thing, I know I said that 2 things ago, but one more thing is I was also looking at the 2019 data because that was our last real year, right? So I was looking at the 2019 data to determine where are we, in alignment to that data. And I'm very happy to say that we are working very hard at closing that gap, because when you look at our 2019 data and then the COVID year and this year, you can see that we're already in the majority of areas that I just went over with you, grade levels and content. If the campuses didn't already meet that, like they're already where they were last time, they're showing progress, very close progress to that. So I think that's good news, because that's showing that what we're doing is working and helping to close that COVID gap. Thank you.
Any other questions? Mr. Mayor, I know that we've only got about 10 days left, but thank you on behalf of the district. Thank you for all.
It's been great work, a lot of work, great work, meaningful work, and it's taken everybody in here to do that work. So thank you, appreciate it.
All right, board, we move now to item number 6A4, which is the HR staffing chart as of 6/14/22. This can be found on page 15 of our packet. Dr. Pettis.
And again, this is just to kind of show you where we're at with all the movement of retirees, resignations, new hires. Again, where we're at. So.
Any specific questions? All right, we move now then to item number 5, which is security guards update. Dr. Pettis. Oh, I'm sorry. We can certainly take it.
No, I'm okay. I got a million questions, my email that works.
All right, then, security guard update, Dr. Pettis.
Okay, let me see, last week we interviewed for security guards and for security personnel, and we have already received 4 that have accepted, correct, Jacob?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, the positions, we're looking at 2 at high school, 2 at Gillette, and 1 that'll be roving the elementaries, the 3 elementaries. Since then, we've had about 3 or 4 more people, 3 more people get interviewed.
Yes, that's Thursday.
Thursday. And we're getting some very good applicants. They've got previous experience in law enforcement. I think every single one of them has some sort of law enforcement, whether it's, Border Patrol, GPS.
And I still need to make a call for the last one tomorrow. So they all have law enforcement experience.
Law enforcement, or one of them, of course, has school experience with us as well. when we met with with sheriff a couple of weeks ago. I feel like this whole week, like last week was like so long ago because we've been in conferences, but the week before that, I met with the sheriff and his 2 assistants, and we talked about the roles of our SROs. Definitely, they're gonna still be able to help us. They're gonna, as soon as we call them, as soon as any of our security personnel calls them, or PD, KPD, they will come right to us as needed. But the security personnel, their sole focus will be walking around the campuses continually, checking doors, checking for any strangers that may be approaching the campus, making sure that they're checking the Raptor system. If there's something that I need or any principal needs for them to go check the restrooms, they can go check the restrooms, you know, for any potential fights or any potential backpacks that have something that shouldn't have in it. Any of those things the security personnel will be able to do. So that's going to be a huge, huge help for campuses. I know when we moved our security personnel from Agent King to Gillette this past semester, they were missing him at Agent King, but boy, what a huge impact he made at Gillette. You know, so we saw that was a big help. Also, what I shared with you all is just, and we have Dr. Vasquez Cruz on the line on Zoom. He has just been collecting information about some upgrades we can do or some things we can put into like system blocks and things like that. And all I'm doing is showing it to you because he's been working on it while we've been gone. So I just got it. I'm just sharing it with you. I'm not saying we're gonna buy it or need approval for anything right now, but I want you to know that he's doing his homework. He's also looking for information about those badges, the access badges as well. So Dr. Vasquez, did you want to say anything about this?
Yes, and basically it's a trifold system, and right now in collaboration with Dr. Sandoval and Dr. Pitts and Max Segovia and myself, we'll be looking at the different aspects of campus safety. And one of the most important aspects has to do with the front door. So we conducted already 3 different site visits, and we were able to identify the type door. The doors, for example, at the elementaries are very different from the doors that you have at the middle school or the high school. In the fact that RV and HMK perhaps have the newest doors with built-in mechanisms that actuate the door and keep it in the locked position. But the system that we're looking at has to do with a device that is tamper-proof, vandal-proof, and it goes on the door frame. So anybody coming to any of our campuses will find out that the door is locked, and they will have to request access via video and audio. There will be a device on the inside by the reception area, and that person will grant access to the building, to the lobby area. We need to remember that our buildings have a double set of doors also on the inside. So at that location, the campus staff can verify on the visitor ID and run it through our software system, Raptor, and then determine whether or not the person is granted final access to the facility, okay, to the principal, to the classroom, or to get the child from school. So again, this project, it's right now only through the front doors. We are also conducting site visits for the additional doors. And for example, at the elementaries, Harold and Perez, we have doors on the east side, we have doors on the west side, and also we have doors that lead to the covered playground area. In some of those areas, we need horns. So this project involves some of those horns as well. So if there is an announcement from the campus administrator, the teacher and the students on the back end of the building will be able to hear the announcement. A separate project, again, involves a second service provider with the addition of magnets. Again, that is in design mode. It's a huge project, nonetheless, it is something that it is extremely necessary so we can maintain our students safe and our staff, and make sure that we offer our parents, our community, assurance that we are doing the best possible in making sure that our kiddos are the safest level possible. It's going to require some training as well. So, any questions?
All right, in regard to the the security guard update. So 4 have agreed to come on in addition to the one that we already had. Is that,
No.
Jason's included in the 4.
okay.
So there's 3 and a possible, another one tomorrow when you make the phone call.
And so those 4, the deployment at this point, you only ended up with 4. They would be most likely,
And we don't think we're gonna end up with more, because we still have 2 alternates that we
Right,
felt good about hiring as
Right.
well. We could just only offer it to 1 at this point.
right.
I mean, because of the budget. So, 1 is gonna be elementaries, which we've already got 1. We've already got 1 at the high school, I'm sorry, at Gillette, and then 2 at the high school. We're looking to fill that other 1 is gonna be for Gillette,
Yes,
make sure we have 2 at Gillette.
so we would have 2 at the Gillette campus, we would have 2 at the high school campus. And at this point, we would have 1 that would be patrolling the 3 elementaries.
What level of security guard are they gonna be hired at?
You mean like lead?
Like security level, like the level of security that security guard is allowed to authoritatively have, authoritatively, yeah. Can they carry a gun? Are they only allowed to call the police? What type of authority does this security guard have? Some carry weapons, some don't.
And they're more, I guess, we could say like security personnel. So currently, our security personnel, what he does is he does not carry a gun. At some point, we can talk about that as a board, that if we want this security personnel to be able to get commission and maybe under the Guardian program, be able to carry a gun, then that would be a conversation that we would have and consider. I am not in favor of having teachers carry guns. They have enough to worry about, enough stress to worry about. But if we have security personnel, maybe they could be armed, then that is something we would look at, but I'd have to work with our attorney and let's see what our options are. I know about that Guardian program that we could pursue. Right now, our current security personnel, if he needs to call 911, he calls 911. But he's always letting the administration know immediately as well, so all of us know immediately.
I'd like to piggyback off Mr. Ramos on, as far as the security guards, what are they able to, I mean, as far as make classroom keys, where they have access cards, they'll have everything that, where they don't have to wait for somebody to get there, but also just get in.
Yes, definitely. Gates, keys to the gates, like at H&King. Yes, I mean, it's like another administrator pretty much, but this administrator's sole focus is to look at.
With a master key.
Yes, security. Yes. Question. Now, this information that Dr. Cruz is collecting about the cost of some of these things, if we're gonna have to move on purchasing some of these things, and then if it's over 25,000, we're gonna have to call, I guess, a board meeting right away, because I don't wanna miss out on getting some of these things and getting them installed.
Dr. Pettis, I believe those vendors are on buy board. Is that correct, Dr. Vestas Cruz?
Yes, those vendors are on co-op region 1, 2, and 3.
Okay, well, we'll talk to our attorney and then he'll let us know if we need to or not. I just want to make y'all aware in case we have to call an emergency meeting, because I need to buy these things and get them on quickly.
And at the end of tonight's agenda, we're going to talk about kind of the next month or so anyway, because it's very likely that we may have to have some emergency meetings. Not emergency meetings, but special call meetings. Any other questions as it relates to the security guards update and or the equipment information? If not, we'll move on to item 6A6, budget update. Dr. Pitts, this can be found on page 30.
Thank you, Mr. Kufal. I'm gonna look at where we are on the budget calendar and talk a little bit about the process, and then I have a few exhibits that we're gonna go through. The next important date is the July board meeting. At the July board meeting, we'll have a budget update. At that time, I will pretty much have close to final expenditures for you at that board meeting. What we won't have finalized yet is revenues. We'll be looking at the state revenues will be close to finalized, but they'll be doing a few tweaks probably near the end of July. The other thing is we won't have our certified property values yet, so we won't have our local revenue finalized yet at that board meeting. And then finally, the other thing that we're going to be waiting on is our tax rate. The amount of revenue that is generated depends on the property values, and it depends on the tax rate. And the tax rate, we have to wait on from the state, who's going to give us a maximum compressed rate that we can set for our tax rate. So we're waiting on a couple of things at the end of the month of July. We have on there, so if you notice 8/1 deadline to receive final certified property values, there's a caveat there. The county can say, hey, we need basically one more week, and we're going to give you estimated values, and we need an additional week. If that happens, that throws our whole calendar off. And we have planned to take to the board on 8/16 the budget, the final budget. The problem with that again is if you notice also 8/5 deadline for TEA to issue maximum compressed tax rate. Hopefully we're going to get that before 8/2. If we get everything before 8/2, we can present it at a final workshop on 8/2. Then after that, we need to post it for at least 10 days, the proposed budget, so the public has a chance to review it before the public meeting. And then we could come and have the public meeting, and then then we could also, after the public meeting, we could have the board items to approve the budget and tax rate. That's if everything goes right. So that is why most districts wait till the end of August to approve their budget, because they are waiting for those items from TEA and from the appraisal district. We are trying to basically push it forward because our scheduled board meeting is early. It's on the 16th. But what may happen is we may have to have a special call board meeting the next week or two after that. So that's where we are on. And I will know at the July board meeting if we're going to have to do that or not. If you look at the next item that we have there, that is last year's budget. So let me make it a little bigger. So if you look at the very top, the tax rate is set there at the top because that determines your revenues that you're going to receive for both your M&O, which is used for maintenance and operations of the district, and INS, which is interest and sinking, which is used to pay our debt. And together, those two, you see 1.0265 for maintenance and operations with our debt 0.49. That gives us our 1.5189 tax rate. And that has been the district's tax rate for about a dozen years or so. It has not changed. We've moved the M&O rate and INS rates have changed, but the total rate has stayed the same, and it's probably going to stay the same. We're going to wait to get the information from the tax assessor, but probably stay the same. And I'll show you why when we look at our debt right now, because the district has a lot of debt. And we have to set a tax rate that pays for our debt. We used to be able to transfer money from the M&O side to the INS to pay that debt, but they have since said that we cannot do that anymore. TEA passed legislation saying that that is not permissible. So what you're going to see when we come in July, the revenues in that top section will not be complete yet. And as you can see, there's three budgets that the board approves: the general fund 199, the food service 240, and the debt service 599. Those top ones won't be ready yet in July, but when we come back in July, I'll have this budget and you will have the expenditures below that should already be completed. Let me scroll down. The board is required to approve expenditures by function or basically category of what those funds are being used for. You see, the biggest expenditure for the district is always function 11, instruction. And that's what we set aside last year, 15 million for instruction, and that's actually low for our district. We, a lot of ESSER funds are required to be spent for instruction. So we are spending a lot of our monies in instruction out of the ESSER grant to meet the compliance, the components of that grant. We won't go through all those other categories right now, but for instance, like function 12, that's technology and libraries. We have a certain amount that the board approves can be used for each category. And if for some reason we need to make a change in the year, an amendment needs to be done. And you'll see that probably in July or August, we'll bring some amendments for this year where if we had budgeted in, we won't go over the total budget, but if we had budgeted in one category less than what we are needing that year, then it comes to the board so the board can amend the budget so we can basically transfer money from one function to another function. At the very bottom, you see $28.7 million. That was how much the board approved last year for our general fund budget, 2.7 for food service and 4.7 for our debt service. And then finally, what you're going to see is at the bottom, you're going to see our fund balances. So last year, at the beginning of the year, we started with a $5.2 million fund balance. Currently, our fund balance is $8.9 million. So you'll see the $8.9 million in the budget I bring to you this year as our starting point. And we are also going to adopt a balanced budget this year. Luckily, all the raises can be paid for the general fund budget and some of the ESSER budget as well too. So you'll also see that we will hopefully be adopting a balanced budget for both food service and for debt service as well. Before I move on to looking at our debt, what questions can I answer about either how the budget's going to look when we bring the expenditures to next board meeting or the budget process?
I'm wondering, can you lower the tax rate?
That is going to be a function of whether we're able to pay our debt or not with increased property values, and that's something that I will bring how much revenue we're expected to get from our property values once I meet with the tax assessor collector.
I'm just kind of wondering too, I don't know if it should be requested or if anybody else is wondering. I'm curious to know what the difference in the tax rate of say 1.5189 to 1.5100. What would be the difference? I'm just wondering with inflation and the extra cost of residents paying taxes this last year, if maybe a reprise on a couple $100 for everybody the next year would.
Well, it ain't gonna be a reprieve because rates,
Rates
assessments
are going up.
And so it's not that the tax rates are gonna be increasing, but the assessments most likely will be larger, specifically on residential properties because of what happened in the real estate market. Statewide nation.
So we'll be expecting a larger payment out of these taxes.
Could be, but see, the problem is if you go to local tax revenues, the 9,333,000, that's not what the total collected by the tax assessor collector for KISD is. It's a much larger number, correct? And then part of it goes to the state, part of it comes back to us in a different in a different breakdown. I mean, you can't just take that number. We don't get 100% of the KISD taxes collected necessarily.
Every year we have a collection rate, and the collection rate that we've had has been close to 96%. I mean, so it's fairly good collection rate. But as Mr. Kufal was saying, there's a lot of other factors. Part of the problem again is the disparity between the county and the comptroller values, and that's always been an issue. Now, the county has been raising values to try to get close to the comptroller because they have basically failed their property value study for a number of years, and once they do that, they're required to work with the comptroller to come to some sort of resolution. And that's also why we have a property value protest every year, so that we can try to work to close that gap, because it's the district that suffers, because the county, and so basically the state's saying, you have to collect this much money, so we're only gonna give you this much money to make the difference. But the county's saying, you know what, we're not gonna give you that much, because we're gonna keep we think the value should be lower. So that is an issue. That is something we can look at, but we are required to set a tax rate for the INS side that at least covers our debt. We have to pay our debts every year, and we're not allowed to transfer from the M&O side. So let's take a look at our debt right now.
But just, I want to clarify one thing before we move forward though.
Yes.
You said we will be adopting a balanced budget, and that may or may not happen.
Well,
The board approves the budget.
oh, yes.
And there have been several years in the past where we have approved a deficit budget because there are so many questions that are not answered necessarily by August the 31st. And there are some issues that we feel good about happening or not happening. And so it may well be that we're not in complete zeroed out at 8/31 just because there's some variables.
Luckily, we have a wild card in the grants that we have, and that's why I feel confident this year, because we have quite a bit of extra expenditures in ESSER, that if we do have some, I guess, questions about how much money we're going to be bringing in or expenditures, we do have extra ESSER funds that they can be used to pick up the slack. Let's take a look at our debt. So KISD has a very high tax rate compared to some other districts, and the biggest part of it is because of our debt. They set the maximum that we can raise for our M&O taxes, but the debt is determined, our INS tax rate is determined by our debt. If you look, then we're going to be paying in our debt service in 2022 2022 is just about past. So let's take a look at 2023. About $4.6 million this next year, 4.6, and then it goes to 4.59, still close to 4.6. It doesn't really drop below 4.6 until 2033. What does that mean? That means that we are, it's going to be very hard to lower the tax rate unless property values go up substantially and are able to cover the difference until 2033. Because again, we're required to set the tax rate to cover our debt. Where do we get that debt from? Well, they are from our bond projects that we've had. The most recent one was the high school and the domes, but we still have bond projects from some previous schools that we have built as well too, because as you can see, our debt schedule goes out at least over 20 years. And if you look at the bottom right now, we have close to 56.7. Well, there's less than that now because we paid the last 2 years. But you see how much interest we're paying in the second column, $25 million of interest over the next 20 years. Basically that also limits what we can do as far as new building projects, because right now our tax rate is maxed out. We are not allowed to go over 50 cents on our tax rate for new building projects, and right now we're at 49.2 cents. So we, again, are maxed out and won't be able to build new facilities for at least 10 more years. So that's where we are. It's not a good situation to be in. The one good situation that we are in is that when the M&O tax rate was reduced, the board wisely determined to move the money over to the INS side. At least now we are self-sustaining, and the taxes we collect every year can cover our debt. Before, it did not cover our debt, and we had to transfer about $1 million every year out of our general fund, out of money that could be used for helping our students. We had to transfer that away from the kids and to pay our debt. But at least now we don't have to do that anymore. I'll take any questions you have about our debt.
Any questions regarding the overall budget update?
Just, I have a quick question, it's kind of silly. But down, as we go down, the amount of money we goes up at some points. Like between 2033 and 2044 or 34, we go 3.512 to 3.593.
Okay, you're looking at 2033?
33 and 34.
Okay, and you're looking at,
The debt service,
okay, so which column, Mr.
the last column.
So 3.5 million. Oh, it goes from 4.6 to 3.512 and then 3.593.
It goes from 3.5, yeah, 3.512 to 3.593.
Whenever we do a bond refunding, we refinance bonds at a lower rate. And when that is done, they try as much as possible to have your debt payments be the same for every year and then eventually decreasing. But unfortunately, they're not always able to do that. If you also look at the interest side, the interest column in 2031 is $1 million. And then you see how it increases right to $2 million the next year?
Correct.
And that's partly because if you look at the principal, it decreases from 3.7 to 2.8. So they try as much as possible to keep our bond payments the same every year. They're not perfect in how they do it, but that's because we have about 9 different bond series, and every time we refinance, there's different principal and interest rates due, and they do the best they can to try to keep it the same at the end, but again, it's not a perfect science.
Well, that's why I was asking, because in 2033, we have $1.8 million principal, and it goes up to $3 million next year. So why wouldn't we just pay it off that year?
Why wouldn't we just pay what else that year?
Why wouldn't pay off the 1.8 instead of paying $3 million?
Oh, the 1.8 is the principal payment due.
Just for that year, just for that year.
So bonds are sold on coupons.
Gotcha, gotcha.
And the coupons can have variances there. Dr. Mitch, what does QSCB stand for?
That is, I'm trying to think of what the acronym is, but basically it's a federal subsidy because there was one bond series that the government during, I think it was certain time during either Obama's years, that they gave a federal subsidy for purchases on school bonds. But as you can see, that particular series will have paid off in 2034, so we won't get any more, I guess, subsidies from the government, but that's a federal subsidy.
Is that a check that's cut to us, or is it netted out?
It's netted out, it's not a check. So, but to answer Mr. Glusing's question, our principal that we owe is 56.7. Actually, it's a little bit under $50 million now because we made a few payments. And then what you see in those columns is just the principal that's due that particular year.
Can you pay on the principal and more than the minimum payment that year?
Yes, you can. The way that you would do that is by setting a higher tax rate so that we would have more revenues to pay off that.
Well, it's not quite that simple because coupons come with an interest rate attached to them. And in times of rising interest rates, you'll have to pay a discount or a premium to be able to pay that off. There are entities out there that have bought those with that particular cash flow in mind over the years. And depending upon what the going interest rates on bonds, if it's higher or lower, there could be a premium or discount involved. So it could, you could do it, but it could end up shooting yourself in the foot by paying off more money.
We'd have to get our financial advisor in to look at the intricacies of that.
Any other questions in regard to the budget update? Thank you, Dr. Pitts. All right, if not, we go to item 6B, which is the budget recap report check register for May 2022. This can be found on page 34 of our packet. Dr. Pitts.
Thank you, Mr. Football. I'm going to point out some of the larger expenditures in our district. The one thing I want you to notice is, if you look at the fund column, we have tried really hard to take some big expenditures and pay them out of something other than general fund. So like you notice, you'll see health in service, you'll see Title I food service, you'll see ESSER 3 and ESSER 2 in different places. So all of those are to try to help the general fund so that we are not depleting our general fund fund balance. If you look near the top, always near the top are our health insurance. That's a big expense for the district, and our electricity usage. Those will always be near the top of our expenditures every month. You see leadership coaching from E3 Alliance. That is a part of a grant. It falls under Title I, but it's actually ESF, which is for schools that I guess you would say schools that are in need of assistance. We have 2 schools, Harrell and Gillette, that are receiving assistance right now from that grant, that leadership coaching, and that is completely paid for out of that grant. You see workers' compensation, $34,900. That is a big expenditure that we have a small expenditure every month, but then we have overage charges that we pay at the end of the policy year. If you go all the way down to petroleum traders, that's 2 months, 15,000. We used to not spend that much in fuel, but fuel costs are really high right now. The one good thing that we did is we signed a fuel lease where till the end of December of 2023, we will only pay $3.37 for unleaded. And if you look at the pump, it's definitely more than $3.37 at the pump. So we have signed a fuel lease for that, and for $3.77 for diesel, which is quite a bit more than that on the market. So we have been planning ahead and making sure we have that locked in. Just like with electricity, we have a low rate locked in, I believe, till 2032. So we're able to go much further ahead of time for that. And again, both of those rates, both fuel and electricity, are very high right now. So luckily, when we're budgeting, we know what to budget for those expenditures. We don't have to worry about variable rates for now. If you look at the sidewalk, HMK sidewalk for $13,708, that was a safety issue that we took care of. Their students crossed the sidewalk at HMK to get to the welding and agricultural facilities. So we created a sidewalk and put crosswalks and basically chained off an area so that students could walk safely. And then we also put red concrete barriers so that kids could not just drive directly across the parking lot there, to make it a little bit safer. I will take any other questions you have on items on the check register.
Any specific questions? If not, thank you, Dr. Pitts. We move on to item number 7, which is new business. Item 7A, discussion and possible action regarding attendance compliance officer, which would be a new position. This will be presented by Dr. Pettis and can be found on page 41 of our packet.
Okay, this is a position I've been talking about, or that we were considering. I was just trying to find the right funding. We had 7 nurses because of the consolidation, and we only needed 5. 2 will be retiring or resigning, and so we want to use those funds to pay for this position that we feel is strongly needed because of our attendance rates. You know, ADA funding is based on ADA, and we have a serious issue with truancy, and with students arriving at 9:30, leaving at 1:30, or just a lot of absences. I don't want to just have what's like a truancy officer. I want to have someone that's really going to identify the root causes of these attendance patterns, these problems. Somebody who can, like on page 43, offer additional counseling to a student, counsel students at risk of dropping out. More of a, let's get them some agencies, maybe referrals that might be able to help them because they're suffering from, you know, whatever else they could be suffering from that is causing this, or maybe some social issues that they're going through that this person could, yes, they have to take them to court, they would also be our liaison at court, but at the same time, let's try to do some preventative measures before it gets as much as possible to get to that point. So we need somebody who can really take this on and own the work that needs to be done, a lot of work.
So you mentioned that this position will also have truancy responsibilities?
Definitely, they're gonna take attendance cases to court, be that liaison for each each campus, to take them to court, file truancy charges, home visits, all those things that need to be done. But in addition to counseling them and really connecting them with some social agencies that they need.
So this person then would be, we would keep our administrators on campus and have this person represent each school.
Right,
And
unless,
then
yes,
we'll keep our people on the campus and have one person going.
exactly, or the attendance clerk might go, you know, with
Yes,
this person, but this would help, very good point, help keep our administration on campus as much as possible. But-
Sometimes those, the court dates, they go for hours.
Yeah.
So, you know, you're short of administrator.
Exactly.
And I don't want to say that I'm not in favor of this, but I also want to make sure that our community is willing to have these court cases. And if we talk to the people that be in charge.
According to Judge Madrid, we plan to have a meeting, once we get this person hopefully on board, have a meeting with him and of the other judges that deal with it, with truancy cases, because we need that support.
Yes, we do.
We need to go, we have all our documentation, and, you know, it defeats the purpose if then they just send us home with nothing happens, you know, so it's really developing a close relationship, but we need a liaison to do that because our administrators really need to focus on leading instruction.
Just a question, Dr. Perez. You mentioned that when we went back to our security officers, we have 2 possibly that would be like on standby. Could one of those, am I right that you had 2 that might be on standby or alternates or what were they?
So if we're gonna have 2 at high school, 2 at Gillette, and 1 that's going to the elementaries, we still have a couple of more people who have applied for positions to be security. Like if the first person can take the job,
Gotcha.
2.
So could we possibly incorporate this position in with that one if they're qualified?
If they apply for the
If
position.
they apply for that position and maybe still have the truancy, but still also would be a security measure for our elementaries, that's a possibility. Or high school, it could be anywhere.
Well, this person would be working with all the campuses. They're
Yes.
doing truancy for all the campuses, or the prevention for all the campuses. But if anybody wants to apply for it, once we get it approved, if it gets approved and we post, then whoever applies will be interviewing for it.
The reason why we're voting on this tonight is because we're opening up an entirely new position. I'm just wondering, can we do that temporarily, as in, this is a new position, we get to hire someone, and then look at the work that's been done throughout the year to see if it's even effective before a contract gets resubmitted and re-signed, agreed upon. Is that possible? Or never?
Are you talking about if they don't fulfill their duties, they would not be renewed?
That if this doesn't end up turning into what we hope it does, or it doesn't really get our students back in the seats.
So it's not, if it's not being effective, yeah, we're gonna have to measure the progress. We're gonna have to, just like we do with the academics, we're gonna have to see, is it making a difference?
But that position's still created, so it can keep going on and on and on and on and on. So I'm just wondering if we can agree to vote on this being a temporary position for a year instead of actually making a new position every year.
One way to do that would be to pay for it out of ESSER funds. This would be an ESSER expense to get students to school, to encourage students to come to school. And if you pay for it out of ESSER funds, basically, once the funds are gone, which we would have 2 years for it, then the district would have the decision to make that at their prerogative. They could either continue that with local funds or not. I'm not sure, maybe Mr. Maddox can answer this question about if you have a position out of local funds, can you just say that we're gonna have it for 1 year and then just disband it if they don't perform?
Laura, I think a wiser way to do this is recall that this individual is not on a Chapter 21 contract. So there's not a renewal and honorable provision. So this contract will expire naturally, just like your cell phone contract. So if we do not actively renew it, it will expire and terminate that employment. So if this position or this individual is not working out at the end of the year, we simply notice a non-renewal of the contract and we're done. It's actually much more simple than.
But I'm just going back to what
We
is,
get caught up in the,
no, but to get rid of it
Entire-
in a year, I mean, we need to give it at least 3 years to see growth. I mean, I can't see having a position this year and because it wasn't, he or she wasn't being effective, do away with the position in general. Is that what you're saying? I think, if that individual doesn't work out, well, then we look for someone else, but in order to measure growth, we need at least 3 to 5 years.
I believe we currently have truancy officers in every school, that be either the
But their
assistant principal or the
responsibilities are
principal.
different. This right here, the responsibilities
A
are
whole lot
totally
more.
different.
Correct, I'm just wondering, are they gonna hide out in the bathroom all day long, or are we really gonna get results from this? That's why I'm wondering, is this a current position that we agree upon and it stays forever and a day? And we end up in a lawsuit, because we wanna get rid of them.
But they're not on the contract.
Right, it's gonna be a year-to-year contract and their evaluation will determine whether that gets renewed.
And I think that the harm in going public with a position that is limited to 1 year, I think you may limit the number of people who would apply for the job.
I agree.
Any other questions? Comments?
Just a comment that, and looking at bringing this person on, the success is gonna be, for this person, is gonna be built on what have we done this year with truancy, what changes we wanna make. So, how much muscle is this person gonna have? And when they do make home visits, do they go with law enforcement? Will we take an SRO with them? When they have to do that, and then we'd rather meet on a campus, because a lot of times parents will come in, if you call them in. And sometimes parents will want that help to get the kids in school. So, and then looking at the qualification, it's bachelor's degree, master's preferred, so you're going to, this person's gonna have a lot of work to do. But I think, they'll probably prioritize based on last year's information. These are the ones I need to get in now, and then work back from that.
Right.
It's hard to get kids in.
Yes. And I would love for them to hold like a court at a campus. We did that at my previous district where the judge came
Yes, we
to
did.
campus. And then you get more people showing up. So all those types of things that somebody can focus on that our campus principals really don't have the time right now to focus on. They've got to be in those classrooms.
So you have a single, there's like a television for that only with the help of tennis courts.
Right.
I don't know if that can be done in 1 year, that's why we would need
Yeah, the
But-
problem's too big.
Yeah.
To make a difference.
Any other questions, comments? You've heard the presentation, the recommendation that the administration has provided that we approve the attendance compliance officer, which will be a new position as it was presented. Is there a motion to that effect?
I'll make a motion.
Motion made by Mr. Morales. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Chapa seconded the motion. Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Item 7B, discussion and possible action regarding the authority of fast track teacher hires. Dr. Pettis will present this as found on page 46 of our packet. I jump in here and help in this regard too. If y'all will recall, our board policy DC local, the board has the final authority for contracting personnel. However, as in years past, due to the number of the vacant teacher positions and the shortage of teachers, when we find somebody, we need to act on it very quickly many times. And the problem has been with if the board retains that final authority for teachers or any personnel for that matter, the vacancies will have to wait, any contract would have to wait until after it was approved by a board. As in years past, we have allowed fast track hires and allowed the superintendent to make current teacher vacancy hires with her approval and then report them to the board as opposed to waiting for board approval. This is something that's already kind of been in effect for a while. It was never really terminated, but we're bringing it back just to clarify that this is for current teacher vacancies.
Teachers only, no one else. Teachers only, no one above a teacher.
And that's where it gets kind of tricky because like, what's a librarian? Are they a teacher or are they not a teacher? I mean, there's some confusion there, but I think what we're specifically saying, this is for teachers, just the current teacher vacancies.
Because that's where the biggest need is right now, shortage. So I just want to make it clear that it's only teachers and no one else. Because just fast track for teachers, no admin, no one else, just teachers.
You said in there, I don't know if you found those minutes, but there's the previous board, probably before us, agreed that they fast tracked everybody.
It wasn't specified in the minutes, just said fast track for vacant positions. And so this is specifying that this is fast track for vacant teacher positions.
So we still have a fast track available for the rest.
Yeah. That's it.
I know what this implies, but do we have something that is residual from another vote?
No, this will supersede that. Our authority remains for hiring. We have just delegated the hiring of teachers on a fast track to the superintendent.
Yes, I suggest because of your worries, because this is worries, that we say for classroom teachers, because that'll knock out the librarians, that'll knock out the people who just have classroom teachers.
Wait, the expiration date on this? Or are you gonna have it open-ended through the entire year?
Until they're all filled. Maybe all year.
So like nurses, let's say, because we need a nurse. Does I have to wait for a board meeting then to get that approved? Is that?
Currently contracted employees come to the board for approval. Hourly employees don't come to the board for approval. It's only if they're on a contract. So correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Maddox, this order would supersede that of all the contracted employees, all of the rest of them would still come to the board for approval except for teachers. And the danger, if you just say classroom teachers are, yeah, I mean, you have inclusion teachers, you have other teachers as well too, besides just classroom teachers.
Well, just all teachers aspects certified. Yeah. I mean, that would, you know, right back to just aspect certified teachers. That covers classroom teachers, inclusion
Well,
teachers, BMC
yeah.
teachers.
Of course, I'm an SPEC certified teacher too.
What was that?
I think that all administrators are also SPEC certified
That's a
teachers.
different
So,
position.
um,
Or that's a different position. They're not applying for a teacher position. They're applying
What?
for admin. So those do need to go to the board for approval.
Like a librarian, we bring it to the board,
Right, anybody that's not in a teaching position,
dyslexia.
Right.
correct?
and
All of those that are
have
on,
to come to the board, yes.
That's what,
Dyslexia ones are hard.
that's what we've been doing as teachers. Teachers.
And if we're in need of something like quick, like a demand, then I'd have to.
Call
yeah,
special.
Yeah, call special. No big deal.
I'd like to see an expiration date on like this, for the end of August or something, and revisit it.
But we may not fill all these positions by
Right.
August, and the way it is around the
Everybody should be back.
state, I mean, everyone's looking for teachers, so. We're gonna be,
There's that great resignation that they've been talking about, that all the sessions we went to at SLI just came back. There's a major shortage.
so not only is it wise to leave it open for September because you may not fill it, but you always have teachers leaving. And if you have a teacher leave, you want to be able to fill that vacancy as well too.
Like in December, like maybe it's a half year.
my opinion, just leave it open until, I mean, we may never, it just depends
So
on.
that's how we're, that's possible issue with, she could hire an assistant superintendent of instruction because she had the open ending ability to do so because somebody forgot all about it.
I think what may be the best way to approach this is, let's set a review date. And let's set it for September 30, which means that in the September board meeting, we come back with perhaps an extension. But what I would prefer to come back with is an adjustment to our local policy, making this somewhat permanent.
I think whether I'm in this chair or any other superintendent is, they're gonna be looking for the best teachers possible, and they're gonna have to bring them. I'm not understanding what the harm is in being able to hire teachers. I don't understand.
But I think we just came out of an issue where we had too many teachers, so, and too many staff. And that's why we were in the money situation we were prior to you.
That was, well, I thought if it wasn't in the schools, we may have had a couple of extras, but.
That agreement was prior to you, I believe. So I just want to make sure that we're monitoring ourselves and making sure things aren't running off into the darkest of nights without us knowing what's going on.
Yeah, why don't we do it 6 months? Why don't we do it through, we're June 20, June 30, December. That's a tough,
These
12,
people
31, but
retire in
that's,
December, so she
Yeah.
might be looking for
We have
teachers.
retirement in December to get their 90 days to go into January.
yeah, but you know what, that'll force us to look at it in December or before. And because we know there's going to be a dire need, it's going to become very important that we as a board get that on our calendar.
Or just change the policy and want to monitor ourselves. So.
Right. All right, healthy discussion, and you've heard the recommendation that we approve the authority to fast track hires. Would someone like to make a motion? Motion made by Ms. Salinas. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Morales. Any further discussion?
And this is just for teachers.
This is as recommended for current teacher vacancies.
with no expiration date, but visiting in December.
Yes. That's what was presented. Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye. Any opposition?
No,
Motion carries 6-0 with trustee Ramos voting no. All right, item 7C, discussion and possible action regarding the second reading of localized policy, keeping local board meetings, found on page 47 of our packet. Dr. Pitts.
Thank you, Mr. Pufol. If you look at page 16 or board packet, page 1 of proposed revision of policy BE local, the only recommended change is changing the 5th calendar day before board meetings to the third calendar day to the 5th for the deadline for submitting items in the agenda. So what this means is if we have a board meeting on Tuesday, currently board policy says you have to submit it 3 days before the board meeting for an agenda item. So 3 days before Tuesday would be on a Saturday. That's impractical. Nobody is working on Saturdays. The proposed revision is the 5th day. So when we have a board meeting on a Tuesday, by that Thursday, the items that are going to be included on the agenda need to be submitted. That is the only recommended revision. I'll take any questions.
There's no questions. Do I hear a motion that be approved as presented?
I just want to make note that I do have a problem with the board president shall call meetings or on request of 2 board members of the board. And I don't think the president should set the calendar date of the meeting if he says there's no meeting and 2 board members say they want a meeting.
And I will say to Mr. Glisting again, as I said at the last board meeting, this board will be glad to entertain any proposed revision, but I haven't seen a proposed revision from you.
I thought you said you were gonna bring it, but that I might have been confused. I thought you were gonna go ahead and do this and then bring it back maybe off of another workshop? Okay, if I can remember right.
No, that's board operating procedures. But
Alright,
this is board policy.
yes.
If you believe the board policy needs to be amended, it is your responsibility as a trustee to present that amendment.
I will do so.
I'll state that I agree with the 5th calendar day, but there's a whole lot more in here I don't agree with it. I'll be sending that to you. Thank you.
All right, any further discussion? If not, is there a motion that we approve the second reading of the localized policy reading local board meetings? I'll move that we approve. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Motion made by Mr. Kufal, seconded by Ms. Salinas. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition?
Nay.
Motion carries 5-2. It's 4-2. Mr. Chopper was absent from the room at the time of the vote. Item 7D, discussion and possible action regarding the first reading of proposed revisions to board policy GE local relations with parent organizations. This can be found on page 51 of our packet. Dr. Pitts.
Thank you, Mr. Gufel. We brought this to the board before as an informational item. We're bringing it now as a first reading. KISD's recommendation is that all the red that you see be moved to an administrative procedure or I guess a board policy exhibit. And you also notice that we have included a separate item for that exhibit. We've looked at it before, but now what requires approval is to change GE local. The administrative procedure requires no board approval, and that is in effect, but if we are going to again change GE local, it needs board approval. If everything that's in red is already in an administrative procedure, again, the advantages of it being in a procedure are that whenever there is a need of a change, that the administration can make that change in the form of a procedure, and they don't have to wait for 2 readings to make that change. Because there's some issues that we've had with booster clubs in the last few years, we've had to add some things in our procedures that require more close financial monitoring, just to make sure that that the booster clubs are reporting their accounting the way that they're supposed to be. So I'll take any questions that you have on the revision to policy GE local, or also on our administrative procedure, even though that is not under the purview of the board.
Mr. President, was it you that brought up the assuming liability, the insurance coverage? Did you? Who brought that up during the workshop?
I think I did ask about it.
Do you still want that in there, or is that gonna be an issue, or? Let me see. Provide evidence of adequate insurance coverage for activities conducted on school premises. The district cannot provide insurance coverage for the booster club. That is on page 59.
That's a normal requirement whenever someone is either using our facility or leasing our facility, that we make sure that they have insurance to cover anything that could go wrong on our premises. So it's not, I guess, confined to booster clubs, but that's something that, again, it's in an administrative procedure. That's something that we could look at as a district of whether we want to include that in there. Mr. Maddox, do you have any recommendation on whether that is something that is prohibitive for organizations?
Yes, that is an ordinary clause, especially for for-profit organizations. For nonprofit organizations, we can put in some language where they do have immunities given by the state. That can also apply to us for injuries that occur somewhat like ours. It allows our immunities to extend over that. So that way the nonprofit will not be burdened with obtaining an insurance policy. So we can certainly look at that.
So that would have to be the verbiage and the recommendation or the regulation.
It can be put into the regulation as soon as the superintendent approves it, because it doesn't require board approval.
Okay, that was my second question. So when we have here, it's GE local proposed revisions, which is pretty much got rid of booster organization information required, specific guideline, all that's gone. So really, the board itself doesn't have any regulation or oversight of any of the boosters or anything that goes on the district. So we're kind of wiping our hands of the responsibility of oversight of the superintendent, making sure all that's legit.
It has always been the purview of the administration to oversee boosters to the extent that districts are involved. And the board policy just simply outlines some basic requirements. So the regulation can actually be a lot more thorough than the board policy would have been to begin with if we were to continue to flesh out this regulation.
And the regulation is not board policy. It's more like,
It is not board policy.
It is not board policy.
It is, think of it like a superintendent's policy for her and all of her administration. It's a way for the boosters to
Procedures.
Right, it's a procedure.
Okay, so are these gonna get tacked online? Because if I don't see the purpose of it, I see the purpose is this is what she's got as her guidelines to the district. We're only responsible for the wording that's located in GE local and kind of move on.
I've never seen it because I don't know that we have any other regulations, but would it be in the same little PDF format thing that
It is, so TASB allows for policy local, policy legal, policy exhibit, sometimes like a form that they would include, and then policy regulation. Typically, admin keeps its own regulations, but it can be kept in TASB's policy online, and larger districts do so.
Any further discussion? All right, if not, we had a workshop on this. We discussed it pretty extensively. Again, this is presented as a first reading of the proposed revision to board policy GE local relations with parent organizations. Is there a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Mr. Morales makes a motion that we approve it as presented. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Motion made by Mr. Morales, seconded by Ms. Salinas. Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye. Any opposition? Motion carries 7-0. Item 7E, discussion and possible action regarding interlocal agreement between Houston ISD and Kingsville ISD regarding school health and related services SHARS program. This will be found on page 60 of our packet. Dr. Pitts.
Thank you, Mr. Kufal. We just finished our, a 3-year contract with our current vendor for SHARS. As has been the practice, when we have retiring contracts, we try to make sure that we're still getting the best value for the district. This provider has been with the district a long time, as you see, since 1998, and sometimes in the past, the district has not always gone out and solicited and make sure that they're getting the best deal. They're just renewed and assume that they're getting a good, the best value for the district. I want to commend Dr. Besanias, who had the foresight since the contract was expiring to look at several additional vendors. And that is what we did. This one was not required to go out for an RFP because unless you're spending over $50,000 and unless it is not on by board or an interlocal agreement, and this one's an interlocal agreement, you don't have to go through the formal procurement process for an RFP like we did for roofing, like we're doing for health insurance. But as you can see, if you look at the scoring sheet, the tallies, let me bring it up. So we looked at 5 different vendors. This was, again, the special education department and myself had a committee together. And we looked at 5 different vendors. And as you can see, price was a big part of it. The price was 50%, but also that wasn't the only criteria. Obviously, we looked at the vendor's goods and reputation and the number of references that they had and the quality of the references. We also looked at, we looked at their services in detail to see which one would meet our needs the best too. As you can see, the one that not only, they really scored the highest in every category was Houston ISD, and they have a branch of that's really separate from their ISD. They started off doing their own SHARs, but then other districts reach out to them and they started doing interlocals with many other districts. And Dr. Besanias was familiar with them, so we decided to review this district or this vendor with all the other ones that we reviewed, and they came out scoring the highest. So the SHARs, what this provider will be doing for us is they will be reviewing our Medicaid eligible expenditures and making sure that we get reimbursed for all the available reimbursements that we can get, which depending on the year can be anywhere from $500,000 to $1 million. So it is quite a bit of money that can be reimbursed for the district. So therefore, it's important to have a vendor that can provide the maximum reimbursements, but also at a fee that is competitive as well too. I will take any questions that you have on the SHARS provider.
So these people will be the ones collecting all that. Everything that's coming to our district will be coming through Houston first. They'll do the collection part of it.
We're the ones that we have intermittent billing where we send them the data, and then they prepare everything together so that we can appropriately be reimbursed for it. But the data originally comes from the district.
Okay, thank you. And so, board, one thing to keep in mind is this is an MOU and not a contract for services. And the difference being that while HISD is acting like a vendor, they're not. They're a school district, right? So while I'm 110% behind this, I think it's a great interlocal agreement. I've reviewed it. Just keep in mind that our recourse for a failure to perform services is to just walk away, right? We don't take Houston ISD to court. So just keep that in mind.
This is a 1-year agreement with an option for 1-year extensions.
Dr. Vazquez, you said you are familiar with this service that they provide?
Yes, sir. I am familiar not only with this one, but many of the other ones that you see listed here. And so I think the point originally was the vendor we currently have has been in the district since 1998. Immediately upon looking at the amount of money that we were receiving, I recognized that we needed to do a better job of, number one, training our team to include nurses, our diags, our speech, our parents, and our teachers and our bus drivers who all can bill. And we had not done that to the level that had been there. So in visiting with the one we have, they said, well, this is what we've always done. And so we began visiting with Dr. Pitts about the other vendors that we do have available to us. So we did meet personally with all of these. Frontline is a new one, and it's just landing its platform. But a district in Region 2 is using it and said they haven't worked out all the kinks. There are several districts in this region that use Houston, and they have almost doubled their revenue coming back in because of the level of training, the transparency of the collection piece, and being able to really show our parents how this can also benefit their own children with skilled nursing and so forth, and also be able to benefit the district with the funds.
That's good. Thank you for doing that.
Okay, are these the same people that will be sending out a letter every year asking permission as far as Medicaid is concerned? So is that the letter that we get in the mail midway through the year?
Yes, ma'am.
Why don't we do it at the beginning of the year after we've taken attendance?
Well, what we're doing is we're actually, as soon as we decide a new vendor, we're starting our training and pulling their products to Kingsville. We currently this year use what was here before. We're making changes.
Any further questions, discussion?
No, I appreciate the training we're gonna get that includes transportation and I mean, there's a lot that we can be reimbursed for, so thank you.
I do want to point to the board, there is one little revision. If you look at the first page of the interlocal agreement, it says on there in term and termination, this agreement will automatically be renewed annually for 3, and then there's a 4 in there. That should be a 3 there in parentheses, 3 consecutive years after completion, except with 60 days advance written notice. So in other words, we do have an opportunity to get out of it, and again, we'll make that change for it will be 3 consecutive years in parentheses there. But every year we have the opportunity to be removed from this contract. We didn't want to be locked into a long-term contract like we were before.
Further discussion or questions? If not, you've heard the presentation and administration's recommendation that the Board of Trustees approve the interlocal agreement between Houston ISD and Kingsville ISD regarding school health and related services, the SHARS program. Is there a motion to that effect?
So moved.
Motion made by Mr. Garcia, seconded by Ms. Ramos.
Sure. Second.
Further discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Motion carries 7-0. Item 7F, discussion and possible action regarding the 2022-2023 student and employee meals rate. So we found on page 76 of our packet, Dr. Pitts.
Thank you, Mr. Gufall. Whenever our students go on a field trip or an athletic or other extracurricular activity, and it is during a meal time, they are provided with a meal. And those rates for the lab since 2010 have been $5 for breakfast, $6 for lunch, $7 for dinner. And it's very hard currently with I guess you would say inflation, but also since we haven't made a change in quite some time, in 12 years, to cover those meals. Also, we are proposing a change in whenever adults go to professional development overnight. If it's during the day, they're expected to cover their meals, but overnight, the district does cover their meals. And again, we're requesting a change in the breakfast from $7 to $8, from the lunch to $11 and $12. $18 will stay the same for dinner. And then for the students, we're requesting changes of $1.50 across the board, $6.50 for breakfast, $7.50 for lunch, $8.50 for dinner. We believe that these recommendations will adequately cover how much it is for both student and employee lunches. I'm sorry, for meals, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. I'll take any questions that you might have.
But Dr. Pitts, these are pretty low, I think, in my opinion. When I went with student travel, when I went to the university, I remember 8, 12, and 18 for students. And those were based on federal guidelines. I don't know where. Is this something that did you compare school districts, or how did you come up with the?
That isn't something that we compare to school districts. We can go back and we can look at what some of the other school districts are charging, and bring it back to the board at a later time. And we could do the same thing for the adult meal rates as well too.
Yes, Dr. I'd like to see, especially with our employees, our teachers, maybe theirs up a little bit as well, because we just got back from a training and we were, given something that was set aside for us. If we can look at our teachers, maybe getting our sponsors getting a little something more, that'd be good. If we could compare with others.
So what I hear you saying is there's no opposition to raising the rates. You just want to make sure we're competitive with other districts.
That's correct.
Not too, I think I just bought groceries this afternoon and I got 8 bags worth and it cost me $200. So we gotta account for the possible even more inflation. Can we agree to this tonight and then bring it back?
Yeah, look, a motion to table this.
Table it.
All right, Mr. Chuck has made a motion to table this to bring back at a later board meeting. Is there a second? All right, motion made by Mr. Chuck, seconded by Mrs. Salinas to table this. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Oh, I'm sorry. Discussion?
I am more leaning towards, and if anybody agrees with me, to agree with this today. And we bring it back when the correct rates are there. Therefore, from today on into the next month or so or two, they're getting the increased rate of 50 wholesale.
We were planning to do it starting the next school year, but of course the board has the authority to put it into effect now, but usually these things are approved for the school year.
So we still have time.
We still have time.
There's an EPD prior to that or conferences or anything.
It'll be the current rates, right?
All right, any further discussion?
If we go with if we just go with what's listed as the government GSA rates for the day, it fluctuates from month to month, and they take that into account. So if we were just putting down GSA rates.
Makes it hard to budget though.
Yeah.
True.
All right, motion on the floor is to table this until a future meeting. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Motion carries 7-0. All right, item 7G, discussion and possible action regarding title work and our appraisal of real estate. This is Mr. Kufal will be presented, and on this be on page 77. At our last workshop, there were two separate potential real estate transactions discussed. I don't want to go into too much detail about the specific real estate transactions at this point in time, but there are two separate issues in my mind that come out of that. One, historically, we have found surprises in deeds and got down to the wire on the transaction and found that what we were trying to do couldn't be done. And what I would like to do in terms of at least, well, in both of these, we can have title runs prepared, if they will do title runs, which ultimately would turn into a title commitment if a transaction took place. But I would like to authorize the administration to, in conjunction with the local title company, find the deed and the source of the deed and any subsequent filings past that original deed to make sure there are no restrictions in the deed preventing us from doing what it is we want to do, and that we do indeed own the land that we are even talking about. And the second part of this is that, in my opinion, it is our fiduciary responsibility to know the value of that real estate prior to entering into any kind of transaction, regardless of sales price or donation price or however it comes about. One of those will be relatively easy to do now. The other one will not be so easy to do now because the specific piece of property has not been surveyed out and has not been platted. But what I would like to do is, again, authorize the administration at this time to get a title company to perform that work and to engage an appraiser to appraise at least the property being discussed that we call the ag farm.
Great idea.
Any questions? Or if there will be, in terms of a title search and title work, the cost will be should be very minimal to us, maybe a couple $100. A commercial appraisal on the ag farm could be $5,000. And it will likely take 45 days or more. But when it comes to pieces of property that are owned by municipalities, you can't even rely on tax roll records because nobody's contesting it. There's nobody's paying taxes on it. So it's just a dollar that they have out there that means nothing to anybody.
At the last board workshop, AEP volunteered to pick up the cost for the appraisal of the Quaker substation.
Now that one can't be done, and I want to approve it tonight, and I hope that they stay true to that. But I want to approve it tonight, but we can't order that until they've surveyed out and identified specifically which, I mean, they're going to have some survey work done there. And in fact, it may even have to go to the city to be replatted. But this will at least give you the authority to get that done should it need to be. And since I'm the one who brought it, I would like to make a motion that we authorize administration to perform the necessary title work and or appraisal of the real estate being discussed by the ag farm, what we talk about as the ag farm, and then ultimately some power substation at H.M. King High School. And I think we all are aware of what that means. We'll be able to answer questions if questions about what real estate that is.
I'll second that motion.
All right, there was a motion made by Mr. Kufal, seconded by Mr. Klusik. Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Motion carries 7-0. Item 7H, discussion and possible action regarding revisions to the board operating procedures. It's been found on page 78. Once again, this is the exact same thing we saw at our board workshop. I will tell you, it's not perfect. It may never be perfect, but we as a board just need to, at some point, establish some rules that we say, this is what we're gonna live by and be governed by, and we can, because it's procedures, we can revise and approve at a single reading at any time. Again, since I brought this, I would like to propose that these board operating procedures be adopted as presented.
I'll second.
Motion made by Mr. Kufal, seconded. Ramos? Any questions or discussions?
I just want to make a comment. I just want to thank you and Elizabeth for putting this together along with the calendar sessions that I attended. A successful board can't move on forward without continuing the calendar. Right. This is going to guide us. So really excited for all your hard work.
And although we're not seeing much of the calendar yet, we are.
Oh, but I just got like 5 more things to put on it tonight, so
I have
it will
about
always
7.
be evolving.
So, yes.
And I'll put it out for you guys and give any updates. I work with him once a month, so you should see me out here printing out and give it to you once a month.
Thank you.
All right, any other comments or questions? If not, all those in favor say aye. Any opposition? Motion carries 7-0. Item number 8, the board will now enter in closed session in accordance with the Texas Open Meetings Act, Texas Government Code 551.1071 and 551.1074 to deliberate and consider the following. A, consider and deliberate regarding resignation of contracted employees. B, discussion regarding revocation of proposed non-renewal due to resignation. C, discussion with legal counsel regarding legal and personnel matters. No action will be taken until we return to open session. We are entering closed session at 8:05 p.m.
Tracy.
We now return to open session and take necessary action on matters which the board may discuss in open session upon which action may be taken. We are returning to open session at 8:48 PM. Item 9A, discussion and possible action regarding the resignation of contracted employee.
Administration recommends that the Board of Trustees approve the resignation as discussed in executive session.
You've heard the recommendation of administration. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Motion made by Mr. Glusing,
Second.
seconded by Mr. Morales. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Motion approved 7-0. Item 9B, discussion and possible action regarding employment of contracted personnel. Board, I move that we revoke the proposed non-renewal of Maria Moreno Silva due to resignation. Is there a second?
A second.
Motion made by Mr. Cooper, seconded by Mr. Salinas. Is there any further discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Motion carries 7-0. There being no further business, I declare this meeting adjourned at 8:50 PM.